Salutations, kind folks of YouTube or TikTok. Wherever I decide to post this or cut it up. So, story time. I finally became active on TikTok. And I'm slowly learning that may have been a mistake. On my part, of course. See, last week, as you guys know, I made a video talking about the Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf situation. So I went to TikTok and I posted a few snippets. I made a couple shorts. And it seems black people are up in arms. Like, my TikTok was blowing up. It was going ham. I went to sleep. I woke up where I had like 200 damn comments or something. Black people just mad. And to say my platform is so small, Lord, boy, I pissed off a lot of people. Mainly this guy. I don't even know who this is. Although I can tell he's just like me, an internet nobody. I mean, I'm pretty sure I have more views and interactions on my few little short videos on TikTok than probably his whole little page. But apparently, his message is all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And using me as an example. I mean, I'll give him a couple points for actually tagging me at the bottom right there, you see. Prince of Petty 87, go follow my TikTok. Shameless plug, but yeah, he's using me as an example for this. So let's roll that self-hating bean footage. That y'all advocating for this. That y'all advocating for this young man. Raise up.
As y'all see, we got another one trying to appease the white folks, putting all the blame on Karmelo. And apparently, he just created this profile. He got 4 videos on this profile, so they let me know you made this video so you can talk noise. You don't have your picture up there. What, you don't want to be seen, brother? You don't want to be seen, brother? You one of us. You don't want to be seen? But you want to come out here and spew all this nonsense? I'm trying to tell y'all, man, we need to weed out a whole bunch of black folks. Because if they ain't sticking with us to stick up for our people, like them white folks stick up for their people, whether they white or right or wrong, and 9 times 10 they wrong, and they still stick up for their people. But you got black folks like this dude right here, can't stand behind his people, and them white folks will string you up. Go hang up with them. Go, hey, matter of fact, go hang out with them. Go out to a camping trip with them. Let's see if we're going to see you on the news. Since you're trying to appease them, so...
I don't know why this dude is so angry. I mean, I don't even know him. He made a whole response video to me talking about nothing, A whole response video. Didn't even point out anything he disagreed with. Boy, that's some diabolical work. But I did respond. I wouldn't be the Prince of Petty if I didn't. Let's roll it.
As y'all see, we got another one trying to appease the white folks.
I'm appeasing the white folks because I'm telling the truth? Okay.
Putting all the blame on Karmelo.
Because he's stupid.
And apparently, he just created this profile.
I did not just create this profile. I had a previous profile that I deleted.
He got 4 videos on this profile, so they let me know you made this video so you can talk noise. You don't have your picture up there.
What do I need to put my picture up for? It's my profile. I don't have to abide by your particular rules about having a TikTok.
But you don't want to be seen, bro? You don't want to be seen, bro?
I don't need to be seen. I know I look better than you, though.
You one of us. You don't want to be seen? But you want to come out here and spew all this nonsense?
It's nonsense because it's the law and it's the truth. See, these are the black people we need to weed out, ladies and gentlemen. These right here. They say if you want to hide information from niggas, put it in the book. Or in this case, the modern day, put it in black and white. I have to side with black people solely because they're my own kind. That's these people's logic. Because I'm black, I have to side with stupidity. Because I'm black, I have to side with ignorance. Because I like to read, because I dabble in law, I love reading about and learning about true crime. I make myself knowledgeable about laws. I point out facts, not what you believe, but I point out facts in terms of law. And I become public enemy number one to black folk. Man, that's niggas in a nutshell. See, people understand something. There's a difference between black folk and niggas. I'm just black. People like this dude here, they're the niggas.
Yes, I'm fully aware. I'm childish. I'm fully aware of this. People, at this point, this case with this young man has garnered a division among the nation. My question is why? Then people are expected to side with a certain group because of skin tone. That's insane to me. But I'm not going to give y'all too much right here. This is just a static opening. We're going to go over various forms of info. I have a lot of clips that I need to go through from multiple attorneys and even a judge. So let's get the content warnings out the way, and we're going to jump right on in. Warning. The following may contain language that may not be suitable for younger viewers. The following content will contain heavy use of the word nigga. I wake up every morning and say it 100 times. It makes my teeth whiter. Also, among other possibly harmful language. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Fair use. Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 U.S.C. 107.
A judge granted the request to lower the bond for a North Texas teen facing capital murder charges. 17-year-old Karmelo Anthony is accused of stabbing and killing another student at a track meet in Frisco. Anthony claims he acted in self-defense. Chris Sadeghi live from the courthouse in McKinney. And Chris, the judge heard from Anthony's family this morning before making her decision.
Yeah, Kara, this hearing just wrapped up about 30 minutes ago. In it, we heard from Karmelo Anthony's father. He testified about his son, and in the end, the judge did decide to lower the bond from $1 million to $250,000. Karmelo Anthony entered the courtroom handcuffed, wearing a yellow inmate jumpsuit. He spoke only to identify himself to the judge and stared straight forward while his father, Andrew Anthony, testified about how his son is the oldest of 4 siblings siblings, a straight-A student, active in his church, and worked 2 jobs while serving as captain of the football and track team. To this point, he's not had any criminal history. All factors his defense brought up when asking the judge to lower the bond. The amount they were asking for was $150,000. The prosecution, though, argued the bond should have stayed at $1 million, even asking Andrew Anthony about the online fundraiser that's raised $412,000 for his son's defense. Ultimately, though, the judge said the purpose of bond is not a punishment, but to ensure the defendant returns for his court dates and to protect the community. If Anthony does post the $250,000 bond, he will be on house arrest, confined to his home with a leg monitor, and cannot leave unless the court grants permission. Asked by Judge Angela Tucker if he understood the terms of the bond, Karmelo Anthony simply said yes. Austin Metcalf's family, the victim's family, was in the courtroom. It was a packed courtroom, not a seat to be had, and the judge did acknowledge the amount of scrutiny on this case, not only from the media, but the general public, pointing out that she's presided over many murder trials involving many different races, and that she has never seen the amount of security precautions having to be taken by deputies as what they're seeing in this case.
So there you have it. In case you guys are living under a rock, that's pretty much a soft, preview of what it is we're talking about here. And you guys will know if you tuned into my video last week, the initial video where I spoke about this not being self-defense, but apparently the family had a press conference after he posted bond. Spoiler alert, he got out. He's out now. Everybody deserves a fair bond, a fair and speedy trial. That's the rights of an American citizen. I have no beef with him posting bond. I have zero beef with that. Now, it's come to my attention that after this press conference with the family that did Karmelo zero favors, apparently Jeff Metcalf, Austin Metcalf's father, apparently this man was swatted after he had to be escorted out by police at a public press conference. A public press conference. A press conference that he had all the right to be at. A press conference with the family of the teen that killed his son. He was escorted out of this press conference and had his home swatted. For those of you that don't know, swatting is a form of attempted murder by cop. That is when someone calls the police and lies and comes up with a story about kidnapping or holding one hostage, or somebody in the house is currently being murdered or has been murdered, and the police show up fully amped up in full gear. Sometimes actual SWAT pulls up. Things of that nature happens when your home gets swatted. This man's home was swatted after he just simply attended a press conference to see what was going to be said about his son, about his family. You people, you niggas, do the most. Y'all do the most. Man. And I'm sorry I had to add this part after the initial recording. So I apologize for this. So this is being added on. Now get back to the actual video. But let's check out this press conference, check out some highlights from this and what have you, and get a brief little, conversation going.
Charged with killing Austin Metcalf by stabbing him in the chest during a dispute over seating in the bleachers at a high school track meet. But even before today's news conference began, there was some tension in the room. Fox 4's Casey Stiegel there when it all happened today. Casey.
Yeah, Heather, this is the first time that we've heard from Karmelo Anthony's parents since their 17-year-old son was accused of stabbing another student to death at a high school track meet in Frisco earlier this month. But before today's press conference could even get underway, a pretty uncomfortable moment when the victim's father showed up and then was escorted out by police. As the media was setting up and getting into place for today's press conference at the Next Generation Action Network's offices, Jeff Metcalf, Austin Metcalf's dad, made a surprise appearance. He told me off camera he wanted to hear what was said and did not have plans to make a statement. Then, in another unexpected turn of events, Dallas police showed up and walked Mr. Metcalf out of the building. Minutes later, Karmelo Anthony's parents, Andrew Anthony and Kayla Hayes, came to the podium alongside event organizer Dominique Alexander. Alexander had this to say about it.
Now that's just diabolical. They had to escort this man out, Jeff Metcalf. That's Austin Metcalf's father, Jeff Metcalf. They had to escort this man out. He had a right to be there. It's a public press conference. He had a right to be there. He had all the right to be there. The stay away order is for Karmelo to stay away from the Metcalf family, not the other way around. They had no right escorting that man out of there.
It's disrespectful and just shows you all the character. Who was not invited, he knows that it's inappropriate to be near this family.
How is it inappropriate for that man to be near the family when it was your kid that killed his? If you're having a press conference, one would assume that the victim's family would most likely show up. That is crazy. Dude called it disrespectful. That is wild.
It has been a little more than 2 weeks since police say Anthony stabbed Austin Metcalf in the chest during a dispute over seating in the bleachers at a track meet. Austin's twin says his brother died in his arms. Immediately, the case garnered national attention. Anthony's parents wanted to use Thursday's forum to dispel what they characterized as rumors and misinformation being spread about them on the internet.
My 3 younger children, my husband, and I didn't do anything to deserve to be.
3 younger children? She looked like she's about 25. God dog. She looked like a college student.
Threatened, harassed, and lied about.
They say, contrary to what's being put on social media, they have not yet accessed a single dime from the online fundraising campaign, which has yielded nearly $450,000 in contributions from the public.
The claims that were used about the public donation to buy a home or anything else are completely false.
Through tears, Kayla Hayes spoke about the barrage of threats and harassment her family has endured.
My 13-year-old daughter is afraid to sleep in her own bedroom because she's fearful of what may happen to her. I don't know why we are being targeted and discriminated against before a fair trial. Our son deserves the same rights under the law that everyone is afforded to.
Family advocates also questioned a recent decision made by the school district.
Frisco ISD has notified of their intent to expel Karmelo Anthony from school 1 month before his high school graduation.
A spokesperson for Frisco ISD tells Fox 4 they can't comment on the specific case due to privacy laws. However, if a student is accused of a serious crime, the district looks at the case and decides whether they should be disciplined, adding if they've completed the requirements to graduate, they may do so early, but they're not allowed on district property.
Now, shouldn't that raise question? Because if the school is going through the process to expel him, wouldn't one believe that the school even thinks that Karmelo was wrong in this case and that it most likely wasn't self-defense? Because I'm pretty sure the people at the school have to perform their own investigation as well. Just like the cops, you know, just like the detectives, just like the DA. I'm pretty sure the school has to do their own investigation prior to just expelling someone, you know. I think Karmelo being expelled kind of somewhat lays the groundwork to where one would be inclined to believe that the school even thinks that this wasn't self-defense. That's just a thought.
So the atmosphere at today's press conference was rather controlled. We were initially under the impression that Anthony's parents would be answering select questions from the press. That did not happen. Only prepared statements were made, and then it was all over. Steve?
All right, Casey, a couple questions. Was the murdered student's father, was he disruptive? And by that, I mean, was he saying things to make everybody uncomfortable, and that's why he was removed? Or what do we know about that?
No, he didn't say a word. In fact, I watched him. He sat there quietly. A couple of reporters went up to him and started asking him questions, but he said that he was not preparing any kind of a statement. He wasn't planning to talk. He said he simply wanted to be there to hear what was being said.
All right, I could only find one instance of a charged murder suspect wanting to walk in his or her graduation, complete school, that type of thing. It was a North Carolina case, 2016. He didn't walk. Did you get the idea they're going to press that issue, the family?
They were just pointing out the fact that Frisco ISD, they said, was rushing to judgment and wasn't giving him due process in terms of he has been charged with the crime, but he has not been formally tried and has not gone before a jury of his peers. So Frisco ISD says, though, that if a student is accused or charged with a serious crime like he was, that the district reserves the right to determine what type of disciplinary action will be taken, and that if it is expulsion.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That they're still allowed to graduate, they're just not allowed on campus. In other words, they can't participate in the commencement activities.
Got it. All right,
Steve.
That's Casey Steele in downtown Dallas. Casey, thank you.
Okay, that's pretty much an update of what's been going on since the last time you guys heard from me, since the last video that I posted, since the chaos that ensued on TikTok. Jesus Christ. Let's see, man, I have so many clips, so many videos. Where do I want to go from here? Let's see. Scrolling. Where do I want? Oh, ooh. Oh man, hey. For the sake of being childish, let's see what Charleston White has to say about this.
You cannot bring a weapon to school.
Yeah.
So you can't say I was
What if he says self-defense?
There's no self-defense, because if you are afraid the day before, where you have to take a weapon to school, why not notify your parents? Parents, you notify the school teacher. School teacher that's bringing these kids in here and resolve this issue. Is called conflict resolution. We was taught in homes that has morals and values, you tell the teacher. Somebody fucking with you, you tell the teacher. Let the teachers know, so when y'all have an altercation, you're cleared and you're covered. Documentation beats conversation. So word to documentation to say this is self-defense. It's a premeditated crime because you took a weapon in fear. Anticipating to use it.
That was premeditated, though.
And it's at a track meet. You getting ready to run track with other kids and you got a knife on you. No, man, you got to go to jail. You got to go. So when is it all right to kill the bully? I don't give a fuck what the bully did. He don't have a right to die.
No.
Man, you weak man. That's why I say teach the kids how to deal with bullies, and this won't happen. We're all not equal. Even in nature, you can be feeding a flock of birds. There's going to always be one bird to come in and take the food from the... This is nature. You cannot get rid of bullies. Teach the kids how to deal with them. Bullies build character. You go to work, it's going to be a bully supervisor, a bully co-worker. You cannot get rid of the bully. Teach our children conflict resolution. Everything don't have to end in violence. But when you come from the black culture, everything is disputed in violence.
Yeah. That is the problem, though. That's how you.
It's the culture.
That's the culture. That's how they solve. When you have a serious issue, they don't even contemplate trying to talk it out.
We teach a no snitching rule, right? So our kids are walking around with these mafia rules, codes, and ethics of the streets that's held over children about no snitching. So now I have to take a weapon because I don't want to be a snitch and kill another kid. Oh, it's a simple solution. Don't tell the teacher. I remember telling my brother one time, God will never let you out of jail, nigga, if you ain't got no remorse for the people you killed. No remorse for the man's family. No remorse for the man's boy's father, mother, brother. But y'all got so much for Lil Ronnie, and Lil Ronnie brought death on himself. Look, come on now. Lil Ronnie brought death on himself. Y'all had all the compassion. But here it is, a white kid, two little boys having some boy issues. And one little boy killed another little boy. You mean to tell me you black people ain't got no compassion for neither side? That's why you curse black folks. No wonder God can't bless black people, because black people got a heart of retribution and vengeance and violence and anger. They want to get back at white people. No wonder Dr. King them could get some things and we can't. Because Dr. King them say, hey man, don't hit them back. Hey man, don't hit them back. And them people got way more. Now this group say, let's kill them. Let's kill them. But your kids, you hear about kids every day in the hood schools getting bullied, but y'all don't have this much outrage for bullying. They have a no bullying month, but y'all don't have this much out. But now all of a sudden it's out, let's kill the bully. Most of y'all are bullies. Talk to them today. Most of y'all are, come on, cuz, OG, bullies. Come on, Crip Blood bullies. But now we want to kill the bully. When most of black children go to school every day and have to face a bully, why you think they got to wear Michael Jordan tennis shoes? But now we got a problem with bullies, huh? When have we ever told our kids to go kill the bully? We taught our kids how to stand up to the bully. No matter if it was two of them, fight both of them. But you don't put your life in danger to kill unless you got killing in you. But if you listen to kill music, you got killing in you. There's no way good kids kill. I know a nigga stabbed the girl 93 times, but before he got to 93, he dropped the knife. She begged and she pleaded. He dropped the knife. But because he was abused and he had anger and he had rage inside of him for what his daddy was doing to him, he finished the what's in you gonna come out of you. And good kids don't stab people to death, y'all. This is a kid with some trauma. Let's get the background story first. Just because he out there in Frisco. Oh, black people, y'all wrong, and no wonder God got you cursed. I'm starting to think that curse on us is real, that the Hebrews say. This group hearts is hateful. No compassion. I remember telling my brother one time, God will never let you out of jail, nigga, if you ain't got no remorse for the people you killed.
Did Charleston White lie? Personally, I don't think he did. I personally believe he has a point in everything he said. It seems as if black folk, we do have a propensity for violence. As you guys can see, everyone is rallying behind Karmelo, but not a single one seems to care that Jeff Metcalf lost his son. 17 years old, a child. No one cares. They just want to see Karmelo, a black kid, being biased. They just want to see a black kid walk because of an alleged bully. And I say alleged because I haven't heard anything that portrayed either of those two young men as bullies. Then you got this dude right here, Dominique Alexander, apparently, being the activist, apparently, he's a criminal. Apparently, he's a criminal. God, I love how much research I'm capable of doing. Man, I love the research I'm able to do to just break you black people's faces, niggas, break y'all faces, destroy everything y'all believe in. I love when I'm able to do that. Roll that beautiful criminal bean footage.
Prominent activist in Dallas remains behind bars this morning. Dominique Alexander is charged with 2 counts of family violence. And new at 11, we've learned that Dallas County District Attorney is recusing himself from prosecuting the case. That's because Alexander campaigned for DA John Creuzot in the last election. A judge will be asked to appoint an outside prosecutor now.
CBS 11's Andrea Lucia has more now on Alexander's arrest and his response.
Because you continue to come after us.
A prominent activist who has often clashed with Dallas police over claims of brutality, Dominique Alexander is now facing his own allegations of violence. He was arrested on 2 charges of assault involving the mother of his 2 children. A judge issued an emergency protective order barring him from making contact with the victim.
You are not to go to or within 500 feet of the residence or place of employment of the person listed in your order.
According to a source familiar with the investigation, the victim accused Alexander of slamming her head against a wall and, in a separate incident, choking her. Hours before the arrest, he posted on social media writing, "Thank you, everyone, for your love and prayers for me and the victim. For God will direct our path."
And that was Andrea Lucia reporting. We should tell you that we've just learned within the last half hour that Alexander has posted bond on his assault charges, but he still has outstanding warrants for some other violations that he'll have to pay before he's released from jail. Alexander has posted bond on his assault charges, but he still has outstanding warrants for some other violations that he'll have to pay before he's released from jail. We've also learned late last night that he has a warrant out of Arlington for family violence in that city. That case involves the same victim, and it dates back to 2015. Police records show the woman accused him at that time of pushing her multiple times during an argument. Alexander was charged with a Class C misdemeanor. He did post bond for that charge this morning. Our Steve Pickett is following this story today, the case very closely. He's going to have an update for us coming up on CBS 11 News at 4, 5, and 6.
It was a very scary thing to be able to speak out on the things that I've been experiencing. I know that the things that I have experienced is a real life situation, and I don't want for my family to be exploited over this issue because it's a real issue. These are things that people go through every day, and not everyone has the courage to speak out. I march and I rally for justice, and I believe in justice. We have to know when we have to do the right thing, regardless of how much it hurts.
Good, that's right. Good, that's right.
I just want to let everyone know that I am okay. My family is okay. We're all sticking through this because this issue didn't just happen to one person. It's a whole family that's affected. It's a whole generation of people that are affected right now. As a co-founder of Civil Rights and Justice, again, I do not believe that families should be exploited for likes. Just keep in mind that I'm a real person. This is a real life situation. Our children are involved. And I appreciate if everyone would consider this factor before publicly discussing these matters. Regardless, in spite of all the negativity, I am strong.
Right. That's right. That's right.
I am strong. I am resilient. And I will not allow these incidents to deter me from my goals.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
I have a dream. I have a vision. There is work to be done.
So there you have it. Dominique Alexander is a woman beater. God dog. Who saw that coming? Boy, that's a hell of a plot twist, ain't it? But that's who y'all black folk rally behind. That's y'all homeboy. That's y'all homie. And the girlfriend, the woman, I stopped it because I didn't feel like listening to all that nonsense, but because all women seem to be strong and resilient and junk nowadays, but she didn't recant the charges at all. He did it. He was guilty as hell. Oh man, if that's who y'all want to follow behind, that's on y'all. I ain't got nothing to do with that. I'm on here to talk about the law and what the law says. I'm not on either side. Whether it be Austin Metcalf or whether it be Karmelo Anthony. I'm not on either side. I'm here to talk about what the law states and how this is possibly going to look in court. But that press conference, if you guys go look it up and watch it for yourselves, it's about 30 minutes or so. If you go look up that press conference did not do the Karmelo family any good. None. Oh my God, that press conference made them look like shit. They looked like trash. They looked like the worst individuals to ever have to deal with a court case. That press conference made them look bad. God dog, that press conference made them look bad. Let's see what's next on my agenda here for these videos. I think I'm going to move to lawyers. Yeah, I think I'm going to move on to lawyers or something. Let me see. Scrolling. Okay, let's see. All right, I got what's next right now. Yeah, so I got those other videos lined up now, but I just want to say this before we move on. Back on Charleston White. Again, as I stated, he's right. You know, gone are the days of fighting. The music industry, they only promotes violence and belittling women. And we pass that junk down to our kids. The kids nowadays, they ain't even called kids. They ain't even called teens. We call them YNs. Let's call them young niggas. That's crazy. But unfortunately, as I stated, I agree with Charleston White. I can't stand a nigga, but I'm adult enough to be able to put that aside and acknowledge when someone says something that makes sense. Now, I'm not going to debate with the crackhead on the corner if he or she explains to me what crack did to them and telling me to not go down that path. I'm not going to debate with them. They're right. You know, not trying to compare Charleston White to a crackhead or anything like that, but, you know, I mean, I'm going to take that info, you know? So, I appreciate that, Charleston White, but let's go on to, some of these attorneys that I have lined up, and I want y'all to listen to what they say. It's going to be more than one, but I want y'all to pay attention to what they say. I'm not going to pause it. I'm not even going to talk. I'm not going to say anything. I want y'all to hear this verbatim.
I want to talk a little bit about kind of what we know about this altercation that took place, because I think since the last time we talked, there's been a little bit more information that's come forward where you have Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf who are exchanging words verbally, and then at one point, Karmelo Anthony says something along the lines of touch me, see what happens, and then says punch me, see what happens, and then Austin Metcalf, according to witnesses, puts his hands on Karmelo Anthony, and that is when Anthony allegedly takes out a knife and stabs Austin Metcalf. The defense, it seems, will go down this was an act of self-defense argument as this case goes forward. How does the kind of what we know took place based off witness testimony compared to, how does that align with the law and how the law sees what self-defense is?
Yeah, the law in Texas is very clear as it relates to self-defense, and that is, am I presenting equal force to that which was presented to me? And is that reasonable, right? So reasonable force is it equal? And in this situation, it's not necessarily equal. And so that's the reason why we have discretion, we have ranges of punishment, we have trial settings, and we have mitigating circumstances. So in this particular situation, in this young man's mind, he thought that he was being threatened. He thought that he had to give self-defense in the way that he thought that he needed to provide it. However, the law is very clear. Again, am I presenting equal force, which was given to me? So if he says, well, punch me and see what happens, and this young man punches him, that doesn't give me the right to pull out a gun. That doesn't give me the right to pull out a knife. It's not equal. And so that is the conflict there of what the state and the defense are going back and forth about, or will go back and forth about. I do foresee this probably moving forward to a trial setting because of that specifically. This young man, in his mind, believed that he was defending himself, and that's the issue with sometimes with our laws when we talk about them. I've heard a lot of people say on social media, "Well, every person has the right to defend themselves." Yes, we do. However, that right of self-defense has to be, in fact, equal to that which was presented to you.
Lee, Karmelo Anthony is going to face a jury of his peers, and if what he did if the sort of original reports hold true, that it was just a minor verbal altercation and he pulled out a knife and stabbed this young man in the heart, then he's going to go to jail, going to go to prison for a very, very long time.
He's going to. That's my prediction as a lawyer, and we take on legal cases all the time on this show, given my own past as a 10-year practicing attorney at a very high level. I have no doubt that this kid is in a lot of trouble right now and is more likely than not going to go to prison probably for the rest of his life, because we went through the legal standard with our legal panel just the other day. You cannot respond to non-deadly force with deadly force, period.
So join me today for a little bit of a law lesson on self-defense according to Chapter 9 of the Texas Penal Code, specifically 9.31, self-defense, and 9.32, defense of another person. First, let's talk about the stand your ground law, also known as the Castle Doctrine, which basically says that you have no duty to retreat, that you're in a place legally, you have the legal right to be there, that you're not doing anything criminal, as in committing a crime, and that you haven't provoked the situation. You have the right to defend yourself. But protecting yourself with force and the use of deadly force are two different things. Ooh, force, deadly force. One could be a shove, a punch, a kick. Deadly force would be a stab, a shot, beating with a hammer. So let's talk about deadly force, because that's what we're talking about today, right? The stand your ground law is the use of deadly force. Well, there are limitations when it comes to deadly force. There has to be a reasonable belief that deadly force is reasonable and necessary based on the circumstances. That means that if somebody's yelling at you, "I'm going to kick your ass," you can't just pull out a 9 and shoot them. Pop, pop. Also, that means, get ready for this, fist fights. If somebody gets in a fist fight with you, it's very difficult for you to raise the level of force used from a fist fight to a deadly use of force. If I shove or kick you or punch you in the nose, that doesn't mean you automatically get to pull out a 9 and shoot me again. Another restriction is its immediate use. The threat that you are facing has to be happening now, in the moment. It can't have happened in the past, and then you return and pop somebody because they threatened you with deadly force. And it also can't happen in the future, as in the speculative use of deadly force. I think he might use deadly force in the future, so I'm going to pop him now. No. And once again, we touch on proportionality, which we talked a little bit with the fist fight. Already, Texas state law and a bunch of other states have made it so then if you get in a fist fight with somebody or somebody pops you once or twice, you don't get to go to your car and pull out a gun and shoot them. Lower use of force doesn't mean deadly use of force is authorized. Now, that can change, obviously, and it's a per situation kind of thing, but you get it. I can't come up to you and say, "Let's go," and start swinging at you, and then you just decide, well, I'm going to shoot him. There's got to be more to it than that in order for you to have the appropriate use of deadly force. Now that I've given you those descriptions of, the reasonable use of force, the use of deadly force, its restrictions, and also the stand your ground castle doctrine, here's my opinion and breakdown of what we've received so far from the police report and how we can apply it to these statutes. The defense for Karmelo Anthony is going to have a hard time trying to use the stand your ground law as a defense, specifically where it says that the individual can't have provoked the situation. Right, we go back to the police report. One kid goes to the visitor's side, where all the visitors are, where none of his teammates are, and then chooses to sit down underneath a tent of not his high school, surrounded by none of the people he knows. To which somebody says, hey, you need to move, and his immediate response is, touch me and see what happens, per one of the witnesses. That sounds, to me, an awful lot like somebody trying to start some with a group of people. If I'm at the beach and I have a tent set up and my family's in it, and a stranger comes over and then plops themselves next to my family, I'm gonna look at them like, what are you doing? Get away from my shit. Yes, I'm in a public space, but you're like in my shit by my family. Off. And if he goes, touch me and see what happens, well, that just looks to me like he's intentionally starting a fight with me. Why? I don't know. If you're sitting down in the bleachers under somebody's tent, they tell you to move, you say, touch me, you see what happens, and then immediately grab your knife in your backpack for the speculative force that they might use, you're already wrong.
Say about that. In order for Karmelo to prevail on a self-defense defense, he has to establish that he reasonably feared for his life. And, that's a steep hill to climb given the facts that I've heard so far, but that's the standard here in Texas. It is going to be incredibly difficult for Karmelo's defense team to establish that Austin, the 17-year-old who wanted Karmelo out of his tent, represented a deadly threat or even serious bodily harm. Now, again, we don't know what was said. We don't know what was threatened. But what Karmelo said was that he was going to put his hands on me. That's not he was going to kill me. That's not, I thought he was seriously going to hurt me. It was an offensive touching. All he described was the potential for an offensive touching, which is not going to be enough without more. And the evidence is still coming in.
So we know he was an athlete. It appears that he was there to participate in this event. So I think they would be able to establish that he was able to be in that spot. Whether or not he was supposed to be under the tent, I don't think that's really going to come to play. I think the biggest hurdle here for him is going to be able to show that he thought that this other individual was going to use deadly force or that he was in fear for his life. Putting your hands on someone doesn't equal being allowed to use deadly force. Also, where he was, you would assume there were a number of adults, number of teachers, coaches. So obviously there were so many other options than taking matters into your own hands.
Karmelo Anthony is not likely to succeed on a self-defense claim in his situation with Austin Metcalf. And one of the main reasons why I don't think he's going to be able to succeed is because of the quotes that they are using in the arrest affidavit, which could potentially show intent. Now, intent does not have to be the intent to unalive someone. It can just be the intent to use a dangerous weapon in order to stop your assailant. And developing that plan does not need to be a plan over a couple of days. It can be a plan over a couple of seconds. Like, if this guy touches me, I'm going to use the dangerous thing that I brought in my backpack to hurt him. And that can take all of 1 to 3 seconds. I know a lot of people are saying the fact that he had it in his backpack indicates that he had an intent to start some trouble, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I definitely understand people saying that Texas is a stand your ground state and open carry state. However, when you are standing your ground, you are only able to use force that is justified. Now, people are saying both twins who are well over 200 pounds was approaching Karmelo. Karmelo was only about 160, 170 pounds. So using the weapon might have been justified if he's defending himself against two large boys. But that's going to be a question for fact that the jury has to decide. I know the father of Austin Metcalf is saying that this is not a race issue and he doesn't want it to be a race issue and politicized. However, we have to be honest with ourselves. The fact that this is going to go to trial and the current justice system that we have right now, it is going to turn into a race issue, whether you want it to be one or not.
Now, it's going to come down to it, and I disagree with the guy who said this is not a self-defense case. Yesterday, I think he said it. This is definitely a self-defense case because it always is one until you look at the facts of the case and compare the two. You have to compare who was the initial aggressor. Was it an aggressive act for him to go up and say, get away from the tent? Did he do more than that? My understanding was maybe he touched him and put hands on him. Granted, that makes the decedent in this case maybe the initial aggressor. But you really still then have to look at whether or not Carmelo Anthony responded with appropriate force. He used a deadly weapon, and whether or not he was in imminent fear of great bodily injury, that's the standard in Texas and most every state, to determine whether or not his actions, the way he perceived him, the way Carmelo Anthony perceived him, when he took out that knife and stabbed him. The good part is if the decedent was the aggressor initially. The bad part for Carmelo, if in fact it's true that he sort of said, touch me and you'll see, because that's that aggression, that's that predisposition towards violence that doesn't have a place in a true self-defense case.
For a second, he went wrong. He ran his mouth off too much. He had the witnesses going for him. But if he did that, then what happens is he just quasi removed his defense, because self-defense says you can't escalate the force used unless there is disparate strength between the person who is attacked and the person who is the attacker. In other words, a little old lady could potentially use some deadly force to stop a real strong young guy from doing her in. But two young, strong guys are not supposed to escalate physical force where it is of non-lethal violence into using a weapon and becoming lethal violence. See, he shot his mouth off. He was doing good, and then he opened his mouth. So now he gave them some cause to say, okay, this is a homicide where the situation was escalated. He's an athlete. Why didn't he just respond with physical force? And if the assailant escalated it beyond what was an exchange of physical force, unarmed physical force, then he could escalate the match. Like I was describing, okay, but he ran his mouth off and said, I did it, and he got me scared because he went in. That's not an excuse.
He shouldn't have said nothing, but again,
kept his mouth shut. So,
but
yeah.
Can that be used against him?
Yeah, it can. Anything you say can and may be used in evidence against you. The Fifth Amendment. You have a right to remain silent.
Well, isn't that all of what I said last week? Need I say more? It's not about how I feel. It's facts over feelings. The law says something very specific. And Carmelo Anthony's team is going to have a hell of a time trying to get him off with self-defense. Provocation by intent, antagonizing. Let's take a look at provocation by intent. In Texas, provocation by intent, or provoking the difficulty, is a concept related to self-defense where a defendant may lose their right to self-defense if they intentionally provoke the situation leading to the use of force. Specifically, this means that if someone's actions or words are intended to create a situation where they can then claim self-defense, they may not be able to use self-defense as a legal justification. So his words and action, putting his hand into his bag, gripping that knife and saying, touch me and see what happens, punch me and see what happens, that's provocation by intent. That by itself is a strike against them. Let's take a look at antagonizing during self-defense. This pretty much says the exact same thing, damn near. In Texas, if someone provokes another into using unlawful force, they generally lose the right to claim self-defense. However, there is an exception. If the provoking person clearly abandons the provocation by communicating a clear intent to withdraw peacefully, and the attacker continues or escalates the confrontation, they may still be able to claim self-defense. Texas law emphasizes that self-defense is about protecting yourself, not initiating aggression. Austin Metcalf did not escalate anything. It was Carmelo's words and his action going into his bag that escalated that situation to where it ended up, with Austin Metcalf ending up deceased. Ladies and gentlemen, that's an uphill battle if y'all ever seen one. Like, for real, for real. That is uphill. Now, I got one last attorney that I want to play for you guys. And this one is going to be pretty long, so I may pause it here and there to talk. So just get ready for that. So this, like I said, this one's going to be pretty long. But I want y'all to hear what this other attorney, this last attorney video, has to say.
What I'm about to say by noting that when I talk about these things, folks, I'm not saying what I think should happen. When I'm exploring how murder might get mitigated to manslaughter, I'm not saying that's what should happen. That's a moral good or societal good, or I'm just doing legal analysis, right? So it's emotionless legal analysis. A lot of people get mad at me based on my legal analysis conclusions. Don't bother. I don't care.
Hey, we in the same boat, bro. You're the actual attorney. Me, I just read the law. I follow the book of the law. And people mad at me because I point out some place where they're wrong due to what the law says. So, hey, bro, we're in the same boat.
Care if you don't like my conclusions. Feel free to disagree with them on a technical basis if you like. That's of course fine. But don't get emotional about them. I don't care how you feel about my legal analysis. So let's talk about straight up self-defense. Perfect self-defense. The self-defense that, if successful, gets you to an acquittal. The killing was simply not a crime. You walk out of the courtroom a free man. Any claim of self-defense is built out of up to 5 elements, 5 building blocks of a lawful use of defensive force, up to 5. Often not always all 5. But the good news is there's not 500 elements of a claim of self-defense. There's not 50. There's only up to 5. So it's really not rocket science. And those 5 are listed here: innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. So innocence has to do with the notion that you did not initiate the fight. You're defending yourself against someone else's unlawful use of force. Imminence has to do with the notion that you're defending yourself against a threat that's actually occurring in the moment or immediately about to occur. It's not some past threat. It's not some speculative future threat. Proportionality is a big element in this case because it requires that you not use deadly defensive force unless you're facing a deadly force threat. Deadly force meaning force readily capable of causing death or serious bodily injury. Avoidance has to do with whether or not you have a legal duty to retreat, if safely possible, before you can defend yourself. I've crossed it out here because Texas is a stand your ground state. In fact, it's a hard stand your ground state. So in an otherwise lawful case of self-defense, a legal duty to retreat would be irrelevant. So avoidance as an element doesn't apply here. And reasonableness, another important element, traditionally in the context of imperfect self-defense. So in this case, because avoidance doesn't apply, we're looking at 4 elements to self-defense. Each element is required. These are cumulative. If any one of them can be disproved beyond a reasonable doubt, there is no self-defense.
Keep that in mind. The 5 elements, we're only focusing on 4 due to Texas being a stand your ground state. So avoidance doesn't matter because it's Texas. So 4, the 4 crucial elements of claiming self-defense. If one out of those 4 can be disproven, your self-defense plea is null and void.
Claim of self-defense collapses. And the big threats here, well, there's a number of threats to Karmelo Anthony's claim of perfect self-defense, is proportionality. The absence of any credible evidence that Austin Metcalf was presenting as something that could be reasonably be perceived as an imminent threat of unlawful deadly force, readily capable of causing death or serious bodily injury to Karmelo Anthony in these circumstances: daylight, dozens of people around, no weapon and evidence, and so forth. So proportionality has to do with deadly force. Again, force readily capable of inflicting death or serious bodily injury. You can't use deadly defensive force unless you're facing a deadly force threat. That's the big weakness here for perfect self-defense in the case of Marcellus Anthony. But he may be able to argue imperfect self-defense. That's the central question here. And imperfect self-defense, generally, in most states, we'll see that Texas is different. In most states, the notion of imperfect self-defense centers around this element of reasonableness. And reasonableness really has two components. A subjective component, the defender had to have a genuine, subjective, good faith belief in the need to act in self-defense. Obviously, if they didn't think it was self-defense, how could it be? But beyond that, there's an objective facet, meaning that a hypothetical, reasonable, and prudent person in the same circumstances would also have shared that subjective belief. In other words, a subjective belief can't be the result of, it cannot be irrational. It can't be the result of panic or bare fear. It has to be a reasonable, objectively reasonable, subjective belief in the need to act in self-defense. So you need both, subjective reasonableness and objective reasonableness. If you're missing either one of these, you lose the element of reasonableness. And because that's a required element of self-defense, if you're missing any one of these, you lose self-defense, meaning you lose perfect self-defense. And if you've lost perfect self-defense, your path to an acquittal is over. There is none. But there still might be a path from murder to manslaughter if you can argue imperfect self-defense.
And that was actually one of the things that I was arguing as well. To a few people on TikTok and a few lives that I was in on Facebook. I personally, my opinion, I personally don't believe he's going to get self-defense in this and walk away scot-free at all. Now, manslaughter, he can get manslaughter and probably get sentenced to maybe 20 years. It might only do 10 out of that. Or he might be eligible for parole after 5 years with a manslaughter charge or a manslaughter conviction. So I stated before that, even before I even seen this video, that they may have overcharged him with the first degree murder. They may have had a better case with the manslaughter. As such, he's about to explain.
Imperfect self-defense, as it says, is not a perfect defense, cannot lead to an acquittal. But it can perhaps mitigate murder to manslaughter. So in most states, not in Texas, we're going to get to that, but I want to explain to you how imperfect self-defense normally works. Because when this question was raised to me, hypothetically, someone asked, hey, could imperfect self-defense apply here? My initial thought was, you know what, it could. It could, based on the general doctrine of imperfect self-defense. Now, I researched Texas application of imperfect self-defense and saw that it's different than the general rule. So I don't think it's going to work for Karmelo Anthony, but I'll explain how it generally works in most states first. Imperfect self-defense generally applies when you have what would be almost a perfect claim of self-defense. You have all the other requirements of self-defense, but there's a defect in the reasonableness element. The defender did have a genuine, good faith, subjective belief in the need to act in self-defense, but that belief was irrational, based on panic, based on bare fear. It was not objectively reasonable. They had a panicked reaction that a hypothetical, reasonable, and prudent person would not have had in those circumstances. So they don't have the objective half of reasonableness, which means they don't have reasonableness, which means they can't have perfect self-defense. But if that is the only defect in their claim of self-defense, they may qualify for imperfect self-defense, which mitigates murder to manslaughter, as we've already talked about. Now, Texas, unfortunately for Karmelo Anthony, well, before we get to that, if we just think about how this works in the general sense, if this had been in another state, would this form of imperfect self-defense be a possible path that Karmelo Anthony's counsel could pursue to try to get him out of the murder conviction and get him a manslaughter conviction? Perhaps he could argue, listen, I understand, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that none of you would have had a belief in the need to use deadly force in these circumstances. My client did. He genuinely did. Now, that wasn't a reasonable fear on his part. It was panicked. It was irrational. It was based on bare fear. But it was subjectively genuine. And if it was subjectively genuine, this crime should be mitigated from murder to manslaughter. Completely credible argument. Certainly I would make it on behalf of a client as a criminal defense attorney. If I could, and in most states you could. But Texas treats this concept of imperfect self-defense very differently than I've just described it, this lack of objective reasonableness. They take a different approach. Now, the consequence is the same. Imperfect self-defense in Texas still mitigates murder down to manslaughter, but how you get there is very different. Let me take a sip. In the Texas version of imperfect self-defense, we're not really looking at objective reasonableness. Instead, it applies in the concept of a defender who was an initial provoker of the fight, a non-deadly force fight, and then finds he has to kill in self-defense. And he kills that other person. So it's a consequence of someone, the defendant at trial, the killer. It's a consequence of a killer who provoked the initial confrontation and then had to kill. So let me make it a little more concrete. Imagine we have Joe. Joe provokes a fight with Tom, but he's intending only a non-deadly fight. Think a traditional fist fight. No one's going to suffer death or serious bodily injury. Well, if Joe provokes only a non-deadly force fight, Tom's only lawfully allowed to respond with non-deadly defensive force. That's what proportionality means. If Tom responds with deadly force to a non-deadly force threat from Joe, then Tom has unlawfully escalated a non-deadly force fight to a deadly force fight. In effect, Tom has become the deadly force aggressor, even though Joe was the non-deadly force aggressor. Okay? So Joe sees that, all right, we were having a fist fight. Nobody was going to get killed, but Tom has just pulled out a knife. Tom's pulled out a knife. He's escalated this to a deadly force fight. I can't defend against a knife with my fists, and his escalation to deadly force is unlawful. I've got to defend myself against that knife, so Joe pulls out a gun and shoots Tom. Tom falls over dead with his knife. What do we call that? Do we call Joe's killing of Tom perfect self-defense? It seems kind of weird because it was Joe who provoked the confrontation in the first place. So, yep, I already stepped through all of this. So what's Joe guilty of? Is he guilty of murder? I mean, he's not the one that started the deadly force fight. Tom did that. Is he not guilty of anything? Is it perfect self-defense? The fight would never have happened in the first place but for Joe's initial provocation of starting the fist fight. Well, what Texas does here is they kind of split the difference. They split the fault. And they do that by denying Joe perfect self-defense. You can't get perfect self-defense if you provoked the initial confrontation, even in a non-deadly way, and even if the other person is the one who unlawfully escalates to deadly force. But because it was the other person who escalated to deadly force, was the deadly force aggressor, Texas law says in that circumstance, where Joe's the non-deadly force aggressor, but Tom escalates to deadly force, and that's why Joe kills him, Joe can claim imperfect self-defense and mitigate what would otherwise have been murder down to manslaughter. Could this apply to the Karmelo Anthony situation? Now, I know lots of people are trying to argue that Austin Metcalf was the aggressor here. He put hands on Marcellus Anthony. But that's not relevant to this analysis. The only who is the aggressor question that's relevant to this form of imperfect self-defense was the defendant, the killer, the initial provoker. And the other person responded with deadly force, and that's why he had to kill him. Well, that doesn't fit these facts at all, right? I mean, unless you want to argue that Karmelo Anthony was the initial provoker by his kind of verbal provocation, touch me and see what happens. Maybe you could make that argument, but you're missing the next step. Remember, under this form of imperfect self-defense, you have an initial provoker, and then the other party escalates to deadly force. Did that happen here? There's no evidence that Austin Metcalf ever presented as a deadly force threat. So, whereas the traditional form of imperfect self-defense that has to do with the lack of objective reasonableness might apply on these facts, the Texas form of imperfect self-defense that requires the dead party, the party killed, to have responded to initial non-deadly force with a unlawful deadly force escalation, there's no facts to support that here. So imperfect self-defense is, in my opinion, unlikely to be of much help to Karmelo Anthony. And here's just a cite from a Texas case. There's not a lot of Texas law on this, by the way. And it's the Court of Criminal Appeals. That's really the Texas Supreme Court for criminal matters. Texas is kind of weird. Oklahoma does this too. It has two different Supreme Courts, one for civil matters, one for criminal matters. But this is from that court. 1945, there's not a lot of case law on imperfect self-defense in Texas. But it reads, imperfect self-defense arises where the accused, the defendant, the killer, provokes a difficulty not with an intent to kill, but merely to make an assault, to whip, beat up the assaulted party. But that by reason of his own acts and conduct, he was driven to resort to extreme measures in killing the party he had provoked into a difficulty in order to protect himself from death or serious bodily injury. That's how Texas imperfect self-defense is different than the general model involving the lack of objective reasonableness. So, I don't think this is going to be very helpful to Karmelo Anthony, even though it would be the general application of imperfect self-defense would be a viable defense I would certainly raise on similar facts in a jurisdiction that applied the general model of imperfect self-defense. We'll have to evaluate their credibility, their provenance, but with the evidence we have, we can at least take a look at what the correct legal questions are, even if we don't fully have the evidence we need to arrive at a legal answer to a reasonable degree of legal certainty. And the questions are knowable because the questions are framed by the actual law of self-defense in Texas, which we turn to now. So, like many states, Texas, in effect, divides use of force, the legal justification for the use of force against another person, into two buckets. First, what's required for you to be justified in using just non-deadly force in self-defense? Your hands, pepper spray, something, force that is unlikely to cause death or serious bodily injury. And that law, the non-deadly defensive force law, is Texas Penal Code Section 9.31, entitled simply self-defense. Then they have a separate statute with the additional requirements needed to justify the use of deadly defensive force, and that is found in the next sequential Texas Penal Code, and that is Texas Penal Code 9.32, deadly force in defense of persons. But you'll notice the first condition that you have to satisfy to be justified in the use of deadly force in defense of persons under Section 9.32 is you first have to satisfy the conditions for using any force in self-defense under 9.31, the non-deadly force statute. So we're going to start there. Let me go back to 9.31. Here we go. And I'll pull this up. Now, these are not the complete statutes. They're longer than this, but these are the relevant portions of the statutes for the case that we're considering here. Okay, so Texas Penal Code 9.31, when can you use merely non-deadly force in self-defense? So a person is justified in using force against another when and to the degree they reasonably believe the force is immediately necessary to protect against the other's use of unlawful force. Now, if you've heard me talk about this stuff before, you'll recognize in this what I refer to as the 5 elements of self-defense: innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. These are the building blocks of any claim of self-defense in any state. There are not 500 elements of a self-defense claim. There's not 50 elements. There's only 5, and only up to 5. Not all 5 are always required. They're not all required here. But if we think about those elements, innocence means you were the innocent victim of unlawful force. Imminence means that it's necessary for you to defend yourself in the moment, right now. Proportionality has to do with how much force you can use, only non-deadly, or can you use deadly defensive force? Avoidance has to do with whether or not there's a legal duty to retreat. And reasonableness means you had to have perceived and made your decisions in a reasonable way. Not out of bare fear, not speculative, not imaginative. You applied your powers of reason to the facts before you. We see all that here, right? You're defending yourself against an unlawful force. That's the element of innocence, that you're the victim of an unlawful use of force, not, for example, a lawful arrest, which often involves a lawful use of force. That the attack you're defending against is occurring right now. The element of imminence, well, you have to be defending yourself using defensive force when it's immediately necessary. That's the element of imminence. The element of proportionality is built into this statutory framework, right? One statute for non-deadly force, a second statute for deadly force. That's the element of proportionality. The element of avoidance is not relevant here because Texas is a stand your ground state. It does not have a generalized legal duty to retreat before you can use force in self-defense. That's what the element of avoidance requires. Not only is Texas a stand your ground state, they're what I refer to as a hard stand your ground state. The jury is not even allowed to consider the possibility of retreat in evaluating whether your use of defensive force was reasonable. So we don't have that fourth element of avoidance here. We're really only dealing then with four elements of self-defense: innocence, imminence, proportionality. We skip avoidance. And reasonableness is stated here explicitly. The defender has to reasonably believe the force is immediately necessary. It's a very nice encapsulation of the elements of self-defense in this very first paragraph. Then they have a bunch of exclusions. Even if you meet these conditions, you may still not be legally justified in using force in self-defense. For example, the use of force is not justified, even if you meet those conditions, in response to verbal provocation alone. Well, what do we have here? Given the description by the twin brother, that Austin Metcalf asked Karmelo Anthony to move out from under the tent, that they had a verbal exchange, that Austin Metcalf moved Karmelo Anthony's backpack out from under the tent. That's not physical force upon or threatening Karmelo Anthony. Everything else is verbal. So far, there's zero evidence that Austin Metcalf threatened to use or did use any physical force against Marcelo Anthony. The use of force against another is not justified if the defender consented to the exact use of force attempted by the other. What else did we hear from the twin brother? That effectively, Marcelo Anthony dared.
You keep saying Marcelo Anthony. That's one of the things I like about old people. Because, like, a lot of old people don't pay attention to names and shit. And like, your name might be Quentin, and the old person might call you Clinton. But, ladies and gentlemen, he's talking about Karmelo Anthony. Just want to put that out there. He's talking about Karmelo.
Challenged Austin Metcalf to do something when he refused to move out from under the tent. Well, that sounds a lot like mutual combat. Make me, or provocation. I dare you. Go ahead. If it's mutual combat, if Marcelo Anthony is extending an invitation to Austin Metcalf to engage in physical violence to settle their differences, well, mutual combat is a mutual consent to the use of force. It's a traditional fistfight. You're each agreeing, consenting to the other's use of a fist against you because you're planning to use a fist against them. That's what a traditional fistfight is. That's what mutual combat is. And if that's what you're engaged in, if that's what was being offered here by Marcelo Anthony, he has no claim of self-defense, not even for the use of non-deadly force, much less a knife to the chest. Another exclusion, if the defender provoked the other's use or attempted use of unlawful force. So even if there's evidence that Austin Metcalf put hands on Marcelo Anthony, if that was the result of provocation by Marcelo Anthony, then Marcelo Anthony cannot claim self-defense here because he provoked the encounter. He can't claim self-defense for having provoked the encounter unless he does something particular. It says here, unless he had abandoned the encounter and attempted to retreat from the encounter. And then Austin Metcalf had pursued Marcelo Anthony. Then Marcelo Anthony would have reacquired a privilege of self-defense, but none of that happened here. Now, there is another issue I want to talk about here. I don't think it applies, but
Who does he know by the name of Marcelo? Because that name is like on his mind for some reason. He knows somebody named Marcelo, or maybe somebody named Marcelo is watching his video, kind of like we are right now, and talking about him.
Texas has a rather unique exception to self-defense, and that's if you arm yourself to go to a confrontation to settle your differences with someone. So there's been some prior dispute between two parties. One of them arms himself and says, all right, now I'm going to go, face to face with this guy and settle our differences. But he brought a weapon with him. Now you can be carrying a weapon legally, and that's fine. But there are illegal ways to carry weapons in Texas. For example, concealed carrying a firearm without the necessary permit, at least when this statute was drafted. That would have been, Texas might have gone constitutional carry now, but the point is, if you're carrying the weapon illegally and you go to this confrontation, you seek an explanation from the other party, a confrontation, while you're illegally armed, that loses you self-defense under Texas law. That loses you even the privilege to use non-deadly force in self-defense, much less deadly force. Now, most of the ways of unlawfully carrying a weapon in Texas law have to do with firearms. And of course, no firearm was used here. But Texas does have a weird provision for particular kinds of knives, carrying knives of a certain blade length, anything over 5.5 inches. It's a location restricted knife under Texas law. And if you're carrying that, it's unlawful. It's unlawful possession of a weapon under certain circumstances. That would apply here on school grounds. So if it turns out that this knife that was used by Karmelo Anthony to stab Austin Metcalf had a blade in excess of 5.5 inches, that could be an issue, because that would trigger this provision. Now, the knife itself is not enough. You'd also have to argue that there would have to be evidence that Karmelo Anthony sought out an explanation from Austin Metcalf. Now that may develop, because I have seen reporting, which I expect is fake, but it could be true, that there had been prior confrontation between these two people. The people who are communicating those claims are trying to do it to make Austin Metcalf look bad, like he had bad blood out for Karmelo Anthony.
From what I understand, there is no report, there is no proof that the two of them had any type of altercation prior to the stabbing. The criminal, Dominique Alexander, even came out and said that they did not know each other. This gentleman recorded this prior to that press conference. The two of them did not know each other. There was no altercation prior to the stabbing.
But it would actually work against Karmelo Anthony, because it could be the basis for concluding that Karmelo Anthony went to this tent where he knew Austin Metcalf would be, in an effort to seek out an explanation for their prior conflict, and then used a location-restricted knife in the stabbing of Austin Metcalf, which would preclude the claim of self-defense, even for mere non-deadly force. Then we get to this paragraph here that makes clear that even if you meet all the conditions of Section 9.31, which is non-deadly force in self-defense, it doesn't justify you in using deadly force in self-defense. The use of deadly force, I lost my little pen here. Try this again. The use of deadly force is not justified except as provided for our purposes here in the next statute, 9.32, which we'll look at in just a moment. We also have a stand your ground language. If you're at a location where you have a right to be and you did not provoke the conflict and you're not engaged in criminal activity, you are not required to retreat. So that's Texas stand your ground law. And then it becomes not just stand your ground, but hard stand your ground, because under Texas law, the finder of fact may not even consider the possibility of retreat in evaluating the reasonableness of the act of self-defense, which means the prosecutor cannot argue to the possibility of safe retreat. All right, so that's 9.31. The conditions that have to be met before even mere non-deadly force can be used in self-defense. But for deadly force to be used in self-defense, as was done here, we have to satisfy different conditions. We have to satisfy 9.32, the next sequential statute, deadly force in self-defense. So let's take a look at this. This is what has to be satisfied for this stabbing to be lawful self-defense, the killing of Austin Metcalf by Karmelo Anthony. The first thing, of course, as we've already noted, is before you can be justified in using deadly force under 9.32, you have to meet all the conditions for 9.31. All the conditions for mere non-deadly force in self-defense. In addition to all of those, now there are additional requirements that have to be satisfied before deadly force can be used in self-defense. You have to believe that deadly force is immediately necessary. This goes to imminence, to protect the defender against the other's unlawful use of deadly force. So you need to be facing a deadly force threat before you're privileged to use deadly force in self-defense. That's the element of proportionality. If you're only facing a non-deadly force threat, you can only use non-deadly defensive force. You can't use deadly defensive force until you're facing a deadly force threat. Is there any evidence here, that Marcelo Anthony was facing a deadly force threat at the hands of Austin Metcalf?
No.
There's not much. Austin Metcalf was unarmed. Both of these were healthy young men. Now, the only argument I could see to a claim of Austin Metcalf presenting a deadly force threat, a threat reasonably likely to cause death or serious bodily injury to Karmelo Anthony, is that Austin Metcalf was there with his twin brother. So there is a potential argument here for a disparity of numbers claim, that a 2-on-1 attack would be very difficult to defend against. It might be readily capable of inflicting death or serious bodily injury on Karmelo Anthony. The problem is, that's a much more credible argument. If Austin Metcalf and his twin brother were attempting to beat down Karmelo Anthony in an alley at 2 a.m. with nobody else around. That's not what's happening here. Those are not the circumstances. This is a track meet. There's hundreds of people there. There's probably dozens of people in and around this tent. Nobody is going to just stand by and watch Austin Metcalf and his twin brother beat to death or maim Karmelo Anthony. That's not a reasonable assessment of the risk, even if you believe that the twin brother was going to cooperate with Austin Metcalf to inflict this kind of deadly force beating. And there's no evidence that Austin Metcalf had any intent to do anything of the sort. There's literally zero evidence that he made any conduct that a reasonable person could perceive as threatening in any manner. Not even non-deadly force threatening, much less deadly force threatening. But if I were the defense lawyer for Marcelo Anthony and I were looking to find some argument of a perceived deadly force threat at the hands of Austin Metcalf, that's the only thing I could possibly see. And it's not very strong. I would not want to be the lawyer making that argument, I can tell you that much. So you need to be defending yourself against a deadly force attack before you can use deadly defensive force, or be facing one of these enumerated violent felonies, none of which are relevant here: kidnapping, murder, sexual assault. Nobody is claiming that Austin Metcalf could be reasonably perceived as threatening any of these things against Karmelo Anthony. There's more stand your ground language here. If you're present at a location where you have a right to be, you did not provoke, you were not engaged in criminal activity, you are not required to retreat, and a finder of fact is not allowed to even consider the possibility of retreat. So these two statutes in combination set out the proper legal questions. And again, they really come down to the 5 elements of self-defense, with avoidance off the table. The 4 remaining elements of self-defense: innocence, imminence, proportionality, and reasonable.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. We've heard from multiple lawyers. We even heard from Judge Joe Brown himself. We've gotten multiple outliers in regards to self-defense, stand your ground, and blah, 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 yakety smackety. So let's get this party underway, shall we? let's get something straight. I'm one of those people who believes in you play a stupid game, you'll win a stupid prize. Shout out to Time with Alex. You get what you get. You get what you dish out. Now, in a perfect world, Austin Metcalf, he would have got his face readjusted. He would have got his jaw realigned, if you will. Keep your hands to yourself. It's very simple. And it's not against the law. In this case. But we don't live in that perfect world. We live in a world where people are feeble. People are soft. People are unknowledgeable about laws. We live in a society where people hate to simply read. Had Karmelo socked him one, he would have been beyond fully within his rights. Self-defense, stand your ground, the whole shebang. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. But introducing a knife, being someplace you weren't wanted or welcomed, escalating the level of force, while being the one claiming self-defense, it doesn't fly. On top of running away and on top of discarding the weapon. You see, black folk tend to bring up George Zimmerman. Black folk bringing up Kyle Rittenhouse. Black folk bringing up George Floyd. Let me tell y'all something. This case here with Karmelo Anthony is far different. Allow me to elaborate. The George Floyd comparison. Black folks saying that this young man is being publicly lynched. That can be questioned based on that $1 million bond. But that's it. Period. Look up Tony Temple, a white guy. He died the same way George Floyd did. Not a peep. You didn't hear nothing from white people. The only way you can compare Karmelo Anthony to George Floyd is it questionably being a public lynching. That being they trying to throw Karmelo Anthony under the prison, whereas they killed George Floyd. Completely different case. People bring up George Zimmerman. Let's talk about the George Zimmerman comparison. George Zimmerman was acquitted. Dead people can't talk. I hate to be so blunt saying it like that, but dead people can't talk. There were 0 physical witnesses who were there and saw it. No doorbell camera, no nothing. Plus, the autopsy showed that the trajectory of the bullet that killed Trayvon Martin, it showed that Trayvon was on top of George Zimmerman. Plus, the images of George Zimmerman with a possibly broken nose. Trayvon beat George's ass. But maybe George Zimmerman did that to himself to get out of it. I don't know. I wasn't there. None of us were. So you can't use him either. Kyle Rittenhouse. Let's talk about the Kyle Rittenhouse comparison. This one here is the easiest one to debunk and explain. He was acquitted of murder. Multiple murders, actually. He was confronted at a place that he actually had the right to be. Nobody's talking about that. Kyle Rittenhouse actually had the right to be where he was, per the gas station owner's wishes. He was chased down and surrounded and ganged up on. The first person tried to take his gun after he was chased to a car lot. He was shot and killed. And personally, I believe that was doing society a favor because if memory serves me right, he was a convicted pedophile anyway. I'm going off the dome here. Work with me. But Kyle Rittenhouse then ran away again and the mob caught up with him. They pushed him down. The second dude that was shot, he grabbed the barrel of Kyle Rittenhouse's gun. Shot dead. The next dude bust Kyle Rittenhouse upside the head with a skateboard. Kyle let off a shot, he missed. The last dude actually pulled out a gun. Kyle let off a shot that damn near blew this nigga arm off. Thanks for coming. Self-defense. Clear-cut case. In video. These cases are nowhere near along the lines of Karmelo Anthony. Not even close. I, personally, more so compared this case to the Apple River stabbing. I don't know if you guys remember that. I brought it up in the last video, I think. This is more vindictive of that. Indicative. The English language almost threw a bolo at me, but I ducked. This is indicative of the Apple River stabbing. Let me give y'all a rundown real quick. An older gentleman, since y'all like to play the race stuff, an older gentleman, he was white by the way, an older gentleman actually went tubing down the river and he left his group to go back and search for a lost cell phone. Ironically enough, another group was coming up. And they were some inebriated, intoxicated, drunk teens. As he waved around in the water, looking for the phone, the teens began to antagonize him, thinking he was just some random pedophile messing around with them or something. He ignores them and he walks off, for the most part. Then he turns around and comes back. And it was at that moment he fucked up. Chaos then ensues. One of the teens reaches from beyond the camera frame and hits the dude. He pushes her, and then all hell breaks loose. A teen is then stabbed. Another one, he ends up gutted like a pig in a slaughterhouse. There was all kinds of screaming and running away. It was crazy. But then he leaves, discards the knife, and the police catches up with him later. Self-defense? No. They didn't give him self-defense because they said he had the opportunity to leave. So now he will die in a jail cell. Ain't that something? And then y'all heard Judge Joe Brown, a black judge. A black judge destroyed y'all's logic and y'all feelings and y'all beliefs with just his mere thoughts on what the law says and allows during the commission of self-defense. That's what he did. He destroyed y'all's logic. Black folk, speaking to you black folk, the people who support Karmelo Anthony. And he also verbalized, if what is stated in the police report is true. He added that aspect. So he wasn't just saying that Karmelo could go to jail or should end up in jail. He made sure he put that in there to let you know that if the police report is true, Karmelo cannot plead self-defense, or he's gonna have a hard time pleading self-defense. It's very clear that this young man is on an uphill battle, and while going uphill, he's trying to pull Mount Everest with him. You heard it from multiple points of view, white and black, from people who practice law. I know my shit because I read. They know theirs because they tried cases like that and they study and they know it. People, at the end of the day, Karmelo Anthony, he was where he belonged, in my opinion. And I say was because he bonded out. But he was where he belonged, locked up. Yes, he had a right to be at the track meet. But he was in a spot where he wasn't welcomed. Rain, sleet, or snow, they had the right to tell and or request that he get from under their tent. He didn't go to their school, he wasn't on their team. Then Austin deserved to have his memory reset. He deserved to have his jaw broken. You don't touch, push, shove, hit, or grab to forcibly remove anyone from anywhere. You don't have that right unless you're putting their ass out your house or you're law enforcement. But in turn, Karmelo Anthony, he escalated the situation by pulling out the knife. Texas law calls for equal or proportionate force to imply self-defense. You heard it from the older gentleman who kept getting dude's name wrong. He had a knife at a school-sanctioned event. Depending on the length, that's a misdemeanor or a felony in and of itself. Karmelo antagonized him by saying, touch me and see what happens. Punch me and see what happens. While his hand was in his bag holding said knife. That's called provocation with intent. Antagonizing. He then fled the scene and discarded the knife. If that sounds like self-defense to you, you're a damn fool. Stabbing and killing Austin Metcalf was not equal or proportionate force. Grabbing a person's arm isn't grounds to introduce deadly force. No one introduced deadly force to that altercation but Karmelo Anthony. And he's the person claiming self-defense. In my opinion, looking at the law, that's not self-defense nor standing one's ground. Standing your ground would have been Karmelo knocking Austin Metcalf the fuck out. Self-defense in Texas would have been the two of them beating Carmelo's ass and then Karmelo stabbing and killing one of them, if not both. Or if Austin Metcalf had a weapon himself. That's self-defense. That's standing one's ground. Y'all need to read. Make yourselves knowledgeable on junk before y'all open your mouths and look stupid. For once in y'all lives, be true to yourselves. Given witness accounts, police reports, how much of this story do y'all honestly believe will change? Both sides are saying the other is spewing nonsense. The white side saying blacks are spewing nonsense. Blacks are saying whites are spewing nonsense. But only one side seems to be familiar with the law. And that's the white folk. While the other side is talking like this is going to turn out like Barney transforming into a Stephen King novel. Like that drastic of a difference. How much of this story do y'all think is really going to change? I personally don't think it's going to be a lot. Again, by all means, be true to yourselves. If the roles were reversed, your black son gets stabbed at a basketball game for trying to excuse a white team from his school's side of the court and he dies. You will want that white boy prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. You will want that white boy under the jail, never to be seen again. If Karmelo Anthony stabbed and killed another black team, none of you would care. There would be no GoFundMe. There would be no Give, Send, Go outside of trying to bury the dead nigga. Black Lives Matter wouldn't be able to find a fuck to give. A prime example. A week or so prior to Karmelo Anthony stabbing Austin Metcalf, there was another Texas stabbing. Shocker. Oh, y'all didn't know about that, huh? Where's the outrage? It was two young teen girls. Where's that teen girl's GoFundMe? There's no GoFundMe for her. Not a peep. Most of y'all don't even know about it. The cricket's not even around to make cricket noises. The crickets even took a vacation. Look, I get it. You want to protect your own. You teach your kids to protect themselves no matter what. Y'all feel like Austin had all the right to be there. Karmelo also had all the right to be there. We good? I get it. Truth be told, Austin Metcalf should have gotten his teeth knocked out. Keep your hands to yourself. But I'll never, with a clear-cut conscience, I will never say Austin Metcalf got what he deserved. That young man did not deserve to die. Definitely not for that. If the police reports are in fact true. 17 years old, that's a child. That would be me going against everything I believe in. Shout out to DJ Just J and the AFC, the advocates for children, protecting our youth. That will go against everything I believe in. Do y'all understand the damage you all are causing, promoting the death of a teenager, a child? This situation is bad all around, but yet nobody seems to have any type of remorse for the Metcalf family. No one cares. One dead, and the other can possibly lose most of his adult life behind bars. Y'all are causing damage with this. Y'all say Austin Metcalf got what he got. He got what he deserved. He didn't own the tent. He didn't have the right to do what he did. Okay, bet. Let's use Karmelo supporters' logic against him, y'all. Let's use all the Karmelo Anthony logic against him. Because, truth be told, keep this same energy when someone kills your family member breaking into their home. The next thing you should say is, they shouldn't have been a burglar. They shouldn't have been out here burglarizing anything. Keep this same energy when someone shoots your team for breaking into their car. The next thing you should say is, shouldn't have been out here stealing shit. Keep this same energy when a cop kills your family member. The next thing you should say is, he shouldn't have ran. He shouldn't have resisted. He should have kept his mouth shut. Keep this same energy when someone mows down your granny trying to cross the street. The next thing you should say is, her ass should have walked faster. Y'all hear how stupid that sounds? That's how a lot of you black folks sound. Stupid. A child, a teen, deserved to die because he was young and dumb. Something we all were at some point in time in our lives. Bro, I stand for actual justice. I stand for all that is right. I stand for all that is based in truth and logic. Black folk, I'm sorry. Y'all gotta eat an L on this one. Niggas want us to side with disingenuous behavior, to side with debauchery, to side with tomfoolery, to side with simply being wrong. Why? Because of skin complexion. No, sir. No, ma'am. I can't stick with you all on this one. This isn't a case of race. Niggas, they made it about race. This is a clear-cut case of right and wrong. And I, for one, represent what's right. And what's right will be Karmelo Anthony serving time for what he did in that momentary lapse in judgment. Either that or he simply lacks emotional intelligence. One or the other, if not both. This is a sad case where 2 lives are ruined. Most definitely 2 families are hurting. As it stands right now, 2 families. 2. And the people sitting around lying to themselves, they're part of the problem. If he was wrong, he wouldn't have got the charges lowered. He wouldn't have got the manslaughter charge. Sir or ma'am, he's a kid and didn't have a criminal-esque background. That's why his bond was lowered. As I stated earlier, everyone, for better or worse, is entitled to a decent bond. And when did they lower his charges? You wish. Nothing I found stated his murder 1 charge was lowered to anything remotely close to manslaughter. Silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. Y'all better stop believing these people on the internet. He was jumped. It was 2-on-1. Karmelo didn't have a single bruise. If 2 200-plus pound young boys jumped him at his size, don't you think he would have been at the very least jacked up? Plus, not a single police report or witness stated as such. You don't know what you talking about. The funny thing is, I do. And so do the people I showed you all in this video. Speaking on the facts of witness accounts and actual writings of the police on scene. That's more than enough information to garner an opinion from anyone. As far as a conclusion, yes, you all, we definitely have to sit around and wait for this trial to happen. Wait till the video comes out. There's video. And you better pray that video exonerates Karmelo Anthony, because you all will have egg on your face. Not me, though, because I'm only going off the facts that's out as of now, stating Texas law and reading police reports. And the statements that the witnesses gave the police for the initial reports. Y'all stating feelings. I'm stating facts. That's where we're different. You're a coon. Rising against your own people. Skin folk ain't kinfolk. I'll gladly be a coon. My name here is the Prince of Petty. My online name on a secondary platform is actually Prince Ruckus. So I'm no stranger to people deflecting, ignoring truth and logic just to call me out my name. And rest assured, I don't want to be y'all kinfolk. If you all, talking to the blacks, if y'all can't merely open y'all's eyes and see where you're wrong for not knowing how certain laws work, and admit that you're wrong for supporting the wrong issue at hand, I don't want to be y'all kinfolk. Don't break y'all's arms as far as y'all trying to reach. And then, yeah, he posted bond. I mean, he's out, big deal, big wolf. You know, come on now, you can be out here advocating for justice, and in the same breath, giving death threats to people and putting judges' addresses out and junk. I'm being sarcastic. That's wrong to do. Be sensible. I shouldn't have to say be sensible to adults. Pro-blacks, listen. I'm no attorney, but I think y'all lost this one. Umar Johnson, all you pro-blacks who expect others to walk with you in being uninformed and wrong, hold that L. Because y'all know good and damn well, if this was really about race, Ben Crump would jump from under whatever rock he's under, bust a nut, and get whatever penny he could. Where is he for this? If he spoke out, I sure as hell haven't heard it. Haven't heard his name once come in this situation. That's how you know it's not about race. If he's actually spoken out, by all means, share the video, tag me. I gotta see that, please. So far, I've heard so many stories, lies, even a fake autopsy report. People just making up stuff. Now they saying Karmelo was in fact punched. They saying the two of them actually knew each other. Bruh, just wait till the information comes out. Me, on the other hand, I'm talking about what's out now. The police reports that's out now. The witness statements that's out now. And what Texas law says on self-defense and standing one's ground. Project that hate someplace else. Because Negroes got that shit bad. And peep game, I'm going to leave y'all with this here. This is my last time talking about this until the trial takes place. Because this trial is going to be a sight to behold. Don't be surprised if he gets a plea deal. Because if that happens, everything I stated will be proven right. He was guilty. And he's only getting a plea deal because he has no criminal history and he's young. He's a kid. Don't be surprised if he's found guilty. Because given these circumstances, a jury is going to bury him. Remember, the law is the law. It's there in black and white. And it was deeply explained here. So if he does get off, it's going to be solely because of the video that y'all claim exists is released. And whatever new information comes out that can factually be proven, mark my words, that's going to be the only reason he gets off. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna make sure I mark all these videos, links to all these videos and these channels in the description box. I want y'all to go watch these videos in full for yourself. This is crazy. Bruh. If y'all want real honesty coming at y'all raw, being unbiased, follow my channel. There's multiple other channels on YouTube as well for people not being biased. The biased people, you can clearly see from their videos. Karmelo did no wrong. They touched him. He had the right to stab him. Even Charleston White said that just because he was a bully, he didn't deserve to die. Like, comment, let me know what you guys think about this. Subscribe to the channel. Hell, go to my TikTok and cause whatever chaos you want because they go ham on my TikTok apparently. And I'm going to have to chop this up and post this over there and see what happens. But my TikTok, my link will be in the description box. I've been the Prince of Petty. Thank you all for having an open mind and come and chill with your boy, listening to me, watching these videos with me. But I'm about to go board up my windows before I see a red dot come through my blinds or something. Before somebody comes snipe my ass. I'm out this thing. Holla at your boy.